We most often hear about autism when it's diagnosed in children. The Centers for Disease Control says right now, 1 out of about every 60 children in the U.S. is somewhere on the autism spectrum. You're watching Catalyst, and I'm Professor Vanessa Ruiz. This YouTube edition of Catalyst is brought to you by Arizona PBS and Arizona State University. Life has problems. Science turns them into questions that can lead to solutions and even innovations. This is Catalyst, shaping the future through science research at Arizona State University. Autism isn't the same thing in every child, and children with autism grow up to be adults with autism. People with autism often have challenges that include trouble seeing and understanding facial expressions and other social cues. These challenges can make life and also learning much harder. Meet Tyler. He's a young man with autism disorder, and it affects every aspect of his life.
Unfortunately, he's not really able to be independent in any way.
That's what our day is about, really. Everything's usually always really focused on him.
But Tyler is just one face of this complex disorder.
And the truth is, autism isn't just one thing or one presentation or one person. It's a broad spectrum, so many things in between both ends.
Blair is also autistic, but from the outside, you'd say he's leading what seems like a normal life.
And when we got the diagnosis, that was the turning point for me. It was like, oh, so that's why I'm so different. That's why I think different. And for me, it was affirming.
Like Tyler, Blair has always struggled to communicate and feel accepted, but his symptoms are much more subtle.
And you never really know who you're going to meet or who you're going to interact with and what they're capable of, just because they have a diagnosis of autism.
Finally, meet Rob.
According to the popular notion of high-functioning autism, I'm potty trained and I can tie my own shoelaces. I also have a bachelor degree and a master's degree in computer science, plus a successful career as a software engineer.
Like Blair, Rob lives an independent life, but his autism often leads to misunderstanding and also mistreatment from others. It's clear no two people with autism are the same, and today, we're only beginning to understand this disorder in depth. One of the biggest questions Tyler, Blair, and Rob all face is what will happen as they grow old? Rob wants to avoid assisted living and doctors at all costs. Blair feels his symptoms are getting worse as he ages, and Tyler's parents know they can't take care of him forever. The more we learn about autism, the easier it will be to address this issue. And a researcher right here in Arizona is one of the first to collect data about aging with autism. The questions she is asking may actually improve the quality of life for everyone, autistic or not.
When I look back on my history of my childhood and growing up, it's these two parts that on the one side, my family ran a nursing home. So I spent a lot of time growing up around elderly adults and seeing how things change as we get older and really being interested in trying to maximize quality of life for as long as I could for anybody. And then on the other hand, my sister was a special education teacher and she was quite a few years older than I was. So I would spend a lot of time in her classroom and was always very fascinated by the kids with autism. So somehow in a winding path, I came to start a lab and begin a career where I'm studying how to best understand and take care of older adults with autism. It was first described in the scientific community in the 1940s, and that gentleman who was first described as autistic when he was a little boy is still alive and is in his 80s. So it really is the first time this type of research has been able to be done, that we've identified what autism is to be able to track people that have it as they grow older.
We all lose some mental ability with age. This is why Dr. Braden's study is being conducted on middle-aged men both with and without autism. The idea is to analyze how brain activity and mental ability change over time between the two study groups.
There's about 5 males for every 1 female that are diagnosed. So we recruited a group of now about 30 middle-aged men and compare them to a group of 30 neurotypical men that are similar in every way that we can as far as IQ or years of education, but differ on whether or not they have autism.
As a neurotypical middle-aged man,
Catalyst's executive producer, Steve Filmer, fits the bill for the control group in Dr. Brayton's study. He is volunteering to undergo the testing and asked if we could document his experience.
These men come in and they do a full MRI battery, so they're in the scanner for about an hour.
All right, we're going to get started here. This first scan is about 30 seconds, and all you need to do is hold nice and still.
We take a lot of structural pictures of the brain, the way the gray matter looks, the way the white matter looks.
We're going to start with the two-back task again, and that's the one where you're either going to match a letter, one letter back, or two letters back. Are you ready?
Ready, yeah.
Okay, here we go.
And then we also have them do some functional tasks where they're looking at a computer screen and thinking about some of these same problem-solving tasks, and we can actually see how the blood flows in their brain while they think and see which brain regions they're using to solve the tasks.
All right, Stephen, we're all done. We'll be right in to bring you out.
Okay.
What did you learn in there?
Those cool looking color pictures show us the different parts of your brain, so the separating of the different types of tissue. So the outside of your cortex is your gray matter, and that's where your neurons are and where some of their close range connections are. And then it color codes the next layer differently, which is your white matter. And those are those long range connections, so parts across very distant aspects of your brain can communicate, and that's entirely necessary for us to do complicated things like language and problem solving and memory. So we can parse out these different areas and then see if their sizes are different or if their integrity is different. And in particular, that white matter is something that we notice that the integrity of those connecting fibers is a little bit lower in older men with autism.
How does that play out in their lives?
What we think it plays out as is these really complicated cognitive processes that involve rapid communication from parts of the brain that are really far apart. That communication isn't happening as rapidly. And if it doesn't happen as rapidly, then the skills don't get executed as smoothly. So things like being flexible, for example, or responding appropriately in a social conversation.
And that could make interactions with people even harder for them.
So a lot of people with autism kind of describe social challenges as not understanding the rules that everybody's playing by. And when you boil that down to what's going on in the brain, it could be that neurotypical people, that brain communication is happening so quickly and effortlessly for those complex social functions that we don't feel on the outside of the rules. We get the rules. The rules are firing in our brain. And that process may not be happening the same way for people on the spectrum.
The biggest problem is that I don't have the ability to communicate using facial expressions or tone of voice. It leaves an ambiguity for people that don't know how to deal with that ambiguity.
For Rob and the other autistic study participants, their first step is taking a diagnostic test for autism. For many of them, tests can be the first time they're officially diagnosed. Rob agreed to recreate his test for us.
I'm just going to be asking you some questions about your life, your feelings, your experiences, and then we'll do a few kind of fun tasks together to break up the questions. The ADAS is the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule, and the test is created to kind of craft a social world filled with social opportunity to connect with the participant and learn about them and the way that they engage with others. And the ADAS does a great job of giving you the opportunity to go places where a conversation might not normally go. Into areas like, what are your relationships truly like? And what are your emotions like? And how do you experience those?
But very often I do have a girlfriend. I've had girlfriends for years. They tend to see me as a little distant. Sometimes I'm not romantic, but some of them find me refreshing. I mean, I lead an interesting life because you go around and you challenge people in ways that they're not normally challenged. I can walk down the street and have somebody get mad at me. Within the last year, I'm in a laundromat and all of a sudden a woman decides I'm stalking her. I'm in there doing my laundry. I'm washing my underwear. The police have a woman who's saying, this guy was stalking me, a husband who's mad as hell. They go back and look at the videotape of the laundromat, and I'm just in there doing my laundry. What happened? Well, she looked at me and started filling the ambiguities of my autism with the products of her imagination.
And you can choose which one looks more interesting to you. What would you rather look at? So you're looking to kind of try to generate conversation and see how they interact with you and what is interesting to them. You try to assess their sense of humor about what's happening in the picture.
What else about this?
Well, you tell me, is there anything else any trips it reminds you of or anything in particular that speaks to you about it?
And I'm analyzing. I'm trying to look at this and see specifically what was motivating the artist. What were they trying to do?
So many older adults lack a caregiver or somebody who can provide an accurate developmental history. The ADOS is really the only tool we have that allows us to have a snapshot of their present social functioning and examine that to try to come to a diagnostic conclusion. Everyone might have traits of autism, but the point where you get a diagnosis is when your symptoms add up enough to impair your functioning or affect your daily living in some way.
You guys all see the board? The same schedule as last Friday. So the social problems is the biggest thing in my life. When I was a kid and growing up, I couldn't get along with the kids and they were always bullying me because I was saying odd stuff.
All 4 members of the Hill family have autism. In fact, Blair and his wife Jody were diagnosed at the same time as their kids.
So I memorized scripts of how to talk to people when I was 12 and 13. And if I didn't have that, I would be really worse in social conditions. That got me through all my oddness. And as we got older, we realized we couldn't handle as many people. We can't handle as much of a workload. It's harder to think, it's harder to process. Because when I'm doing anything, it takes me so much processing time to think about what I'm gonna say. Am I saying it right? Where am I? You know, all these questions, my mind is just going all the time. And it's going on in the background. So you don't see it, then all of a sudden, sometimes at 2 o'clock I just crash. I'm done. Like, lay down, done. I have like a system for everything and I put a piece of paper immediately into these things so I don't forget. I've developed a support system to help me function what I do because there's a lot of things that I can only do in the household myself that helps the family work. So what happens when I get old and can't do it anymore? Hello, everybody.
This is the Blair and Jody show again.
Yes, with Blair and Jody Hill. We're going to be here talking about autism, and we're with connectautism.org. If you want to
We hope our research informs what exactly will be the best way to take care of an older adult with autism. Younger people with autism tend to struggle with some of the same cognitive abilities that affect all people as we get older. So we know our memory is going to decline with age. Some of our executive function thinking abilities are going to decline with age. So our hypothesis is that adults with autism, if they're already struggling with these cognitive abilities at a younger age, perhaps those abilities may decline faster.
Dr. Blair Braden over there has been doing studies on autism and aging because as these kids are starting to grow up, we're going to have to understand autism and what happens when you age. Because we have the sensory integration problems and this exhaustion problem, but then as you get older, your cognitive ability lessens.
Anything you've learned already from this data?
So what we've learned, I'd say the biggest thing that we know for sure is that the same cognitive struggles that we see in young adults with autism are there and maybe a little bit worse in middle-aged adults. They're not aging out of those difficulties. Instead, they're probably getting worse, and we'll know for sure when we follow the same individual people. So right now in that 2-year span, everybody has not gotten worse, but some have.
After the MRI, Steve is asked to spend several hours doing a series of cognitive tests to see how aging has affected his mind. He will repeat this whole process again in 2 years.
And this battery I hand selected to tap into different cognitive domains that are kind of housed all across the brain. And some of them we know are more or less vulnerable to aging. Some of them we know are more or less different in people with autism. So we're going to kind of throw the gamut at you, and some things will be really easy, some things will be really hard, but do your best.
Okay, here goes.
So try to stay relaxed. If they were really easy for everyone, they wouldn't tell us anything. So just do your best throughout everything, and I'm ready to get started.
We test all kinds of things like planning abilities and memory and flexibility, some things that tend to be affected in people with autism and other things that don't, like vocabulary or semantic knowledge.
And as soon as I am done making the pattern, I'll say okay, and then you can start right at that point. Okay.
These are examples of 2 of the cognitive tasks we use. One is called the Tower of London, and this one assesses planning abilities, how people are able to move the beads in the most efficient ways.
All right, you can go ahead and start with that top card.
Okay.
And then the other one is called the Wisconsin card sorting task, and this measures a lot of executive function abilities like inhibition and set shifting and working memory. And for this one, the participant is not told how the matching occurs, and they have to sort of figure it out by trial and error.
That was hard.
Yes.
How did I do on the cards?
You did totally average on the cards.
And what does average mean?
It requires you to be flexible and to adjust to changes and to come up with new strategies, and importantly to remember the new strategies that you've tried, because you could try something and be successful but then forget what you tried and get all mixed up again. So it has a lot of cognitive processes working at the same time.
What can that test teach us about a guy on the autism spectrum?
Yeah, so that's the test that in our initial study we've seen discriminates best between neurotypical men and older men with autism. So on average, older men with autism tend to make more errors in that test than neurotypical men.
So as you'll see, there are numbers and circles on this page. I'm going to hold the top for you. So I want you to draw a line connecting the circles in an ascending order. So 1, 2, and so on.
Start.
Mm-hmm.
The connect the dots test. How'd I do?
The connect the dots test, the trails test, is a perfect example of how quickly can you process these numbers or letters and connect them in order. So we see that processing speed decrease as we get older, and we see that that processing speed is a bit lower in our older men with autism. So you were able to connect those dots a little bit faster than our middle-aged men with autism.
If I were 30 years younger, would I have done better?
So much better. Yeah.
So much better.
So much better.
And yet
Yeah.
I think I'm just as good as I was 30 years ago.
Sure, no, but that's one of those things that really peaks at like age 19. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm committed to being in this for 2 years. What might you learn, or what do you hope you'll learn at the end of 2 years?
So at the end of 2 years, we'll have our first little picture into what things are harder or easier for people on the spectrum as they get older. And we don't know what we'll see. We expect we'll see some of each. So that, we'll have that first little window in 2 years, but each subsequent year that we can hopefully get you back will help us answer those questions more and more.
But probably in 2 years, I'll do these tests again,
Yeah.
and I'll do worse.
Maybe. We'll see. And I think that we talk about heterogeneity a lot in autism, so people are very different. So I think what we'll end up seeing, and what we hope to see, is only some people are doing a lot worse in 2 years, that it's noticeable. And then we can pick out, okay, if we do these tests initially on someone, what kind of scores are going to show us who needs intervention first?
And that's really useful.
Exactly, yes, that's very useful. We want precision medicine. We don't want to treat everybody the same. We're all so different. We want to be able to say precisely, this person is going to need this help, and this person is going to need this other help, or this person is going to be okay for another 5 or 10 years.
Because autism research and medicine is still very new, many healthcare providers are not trained to accommodate older autistic patients. Many autistic individuals may not see or show clear facial expressions or other subtle social cues when they're talking. Now, this can quickly lead to confusion, especially at the doctor's office.
If I show up and I tell a doctor my elbow hurts, but he does not see a nonverbal reinforcement of that statement, he may decide I'm just there to get painkillers.
They read you wrong. They're always reading you wrong. They're using techniques they use on neurotypical people. They don't work on people on the spectrum.
Now, I have an actual experience where I went to a hospital because I had something in my eye and could not see out of the eye. The emergency room nurse, she told me to read an eye chart. I read the eye chart with my good eye, but I couldn't read the eye chart with the one that had stuff in it. I just couldn't see out of that eye. And she said, I cannot let you see the doctor until you've done the eye chart. And so I actually had to leave that hospital, go to another clinic, and get treatment there because I couldn't get past the emergency room nurse. That is the kind of thing we deal with. They aren't thinking, gee, this guy doesn't make the right facial expressions or have the right tone in his voice. It just seems intuitively obvious to them that I am not genuinely telling them the truth. That's a huge issue autistic people have with the medical community. You don't need to know a lot to deal with an autistic person such as myself other than fall back on professionalism. My strategy is to minimize the probability of challenging those professionals with having to deal with me. I try to lead a fairly healthy lifestyle. I take vitamins every day. I eat like I'm diabetic. so I can avoid being diabetic. I'm planning my life so that I minimize my contact with those people, and so that when they deal with me, it can be straightforward and linear. They don't get bumped off the path with some sort of a challenge. And try not to hit my hand. For instance, right now I'm building a new home, and I have to design that home as a whole life home so that I can stay in it as long as I can myself without having other people regularly attentive. The home I'm currently building will be a metal garage out in the desert. I'm out here in rural Maricopa County, Arizona. I'm building what I call my autistic man cave. Because I'm autistic, I'm single, I have no kids. Autistic man cave simply means that I've faced the reality that I need to do planning early so that I can have a graceful old age, a comfortable old age, and be sustainable without being a burden on others. One thing I've learned is that I really need to have a high level of independence for practical reasons and also for myself, just my own personal comfort. I'm not moving into my home because I want to isolate myself from people or because I only care about myself. I understand the realities of my existence and I'm planning accordingly. I'm not antisocial, I'm not non-social, but it's nice to not have to deal with those issues when I'm at home or in my yard. That works out very well. So I'm looking forward to being out here in every way.
While it is clear that older adults struggle to find support systems for autism, the resources now available to children and young adults are quite extensive and will likely expand as this younger generation grows up.
Nice. While Rob's long-term plans are aimed at living as independently as possible for as long as possible, Tyler works continuously to learn and maintain basic daily living skills in spite of his communication challenges.
He's nonverbal, but he has vocalizations, and we want to keep that going. And so one of the ways we do that is through reading. He loves to read books out loud. He loves working with his providers. They work with him about 3 hours, 3.5 hours a day, every day. And we have a complete home program where we work on everything from daily living skills to leisure skills, what to do on your free time.
It's a full-time job.
Good job. High five.
Tyler is kind of defined as more lower functioning autism, but a lot of people don't really know what that means, and it's not really a set definition, because Tyler is very good at going around on the computer, finding things on the internet, but yet he has challenges with understanding feelings. We can ask him, does your belly hurt? And he won't understand that. He only understands really yes or no, very concrete things. The abstract things are harder for him to understand.
Good job. Good job.
Tyler's parents know that he'll probably always depend on others, and they worry about who will take on that role when they can't do it anymore.
That's the stuff that keeps me up at night. I think it's really important for him to be completely engaged and productive. And we have that right now because we're in our little safety bubble. He's got that engagement at school and he has all his therapies and services. And that's going to end in 3 years. And that's the unknown for us. So it's kind of scary.
I mean, he's 19 now, and not that Wendy and I are necessarily old, but anything can happen at any time, and we realize that. And we always got to be prepared, especially with a person like Tyler, where other people wouldn't know where to start. So as we get older, we know that we have to not only teach other people about all his different ways that he likes to operate, but also just life planning.
Tyler, you ready to stop? Good job.
There are certain things he can do very well. Simple tasks for maybe you and I, but we're very proud that he's able to do those tasks, and it's very good that he can. So we want to not only get him a job, but also a place to live, and also people to be around that understand him.
We know that he can't live with us forever because we're not going to be here forever, so we really need to get him someplace that's sustainable without us. And that's really scary too, because no one's going to take better care of him than his parents. And to know that we need to have a leap of faith with someone else. It's hard.
Although Dr. Braden's study so far has focused on fairly high-functioning men with autism, she hopes to eventually expand the research to include lower-functioning individuals, like Tyler.
It's very important to do the same research in lower functioning individuals as well. People are different in the way their brains are organized, and that's not to say that some brains are organized right and some brains are organized wrong. We have a lot of diversity. And how can we understand the individual ways people's brains work to maximize using those skill sets in our society? So I hope my research and the work that I do helps in that.
Dr. Braden looks forward to expanding the research to help more people and get a more complete picture of aging and autism. Her team has already secured funding to now add women to the study.
The world is learning more about autism every day, and as Dr. Braden and her team discover new things about the brain, we will be better equipped to provide the best life possible to those living with the disorder. I'm Professor Vanessa Ruiz, and you've been watching Catalyst, our show about how science and research strive to solve problems. We'll be back soon with more stories.
Catalyst is supported by Knowledge Enterprise Development at Arizona State University, advancing entrepreneurship, innovation, discovery, and knowledge for the public good.
Subscribe to this channel to see more episodes of Catalyst on YouTube.